Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. My name is James Batchelor. Now, the latest market analysis from Cap HPI reveals that used car trade prices slipped by just 0.1% in March after they rose by 0.1% in February. Now, to discuss this in more detail and the wider used car market, I'm joined by senior valuations editor at Cap HPI, Mark Bulmer. Hello, Mark.
Hi, James. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Now, like I said in my intro, with this 0.1% fall on top of a 0.1% rise the month before, I mean, the market seems to be, well, the trade price seems to be very flat. So I mean, is that too much of a surprise to you?
I think I would say stable. It's good not to see too much fluctuation in prices. I think probably the devil is in the detail, and some prices have moved up markedly, particularly on petrol cars, particularly on price point petrol cars. Everybody chasing the same vehicles, and also movement down on other sides of the market. So it's been stable altogether, but I think there has been caveats. Some of the older end vehicles with high mileage have been really hard work to move this month, which isn't surprising because the car park's been growing in age now because of the lack of new cars coming into it. So the part exchanges tend to be older. The franchise dealers have gone through them and decide which ones they want, and the rest have gone off to the wholesale arena to be sold. When they've got there, they've been quite tough to sell if they've not been appraised correctly.
Yeah, yeah. And traditionally, well, certainly within the last few years, March does tend to be quite stable, doesn't it? We don't tend to see huge rises or declines, do we?
That's absolutely right. Everybody thinks that car prices must zoom up in March, but they don't. They tend to hold firm. There tends to be a build-up of stock towards the back end of the month, and prices historically or seasonally have moved downwards in April. But where we sit at the moment, we've ticked the box of the first quarter. I think the dealer world are pretty happy they've got there on the used car front. I think the new car market will be really interesting because there will be some strong performances in there, compared to last year, but probably not back to where we were in 2019.
Mm. Yeah, I gave the headline figure just then, but of course, as we know, there's a lot more that goes on than just that. So, I mean, what have you been seeing in terms of the overall used car market? I mean, do you think it's in good shape? Is there a lot of demand? Are dealers feeling confident? I mean, what are you seeing?
I think they're very pleased to get the first quarter out of the way, and I think most of them have had a very good time. I think that really good quality used cars are still in high demand, and they're much easier to sell. Retailers do not want to buy vehicles that require work because time is of the essence. It's all about speed of sale. You want to pick the vehicle up, get it on sale as quickly as possible and sold and on to the next. Um, Most dealers are not carrying the stocks they once did because of the price of money and the price of stocking these vehicles. So they have to turn them quicker. They don't want to buy work. They just want to focus on that top quality vehicle. So anybody out there that's preparing vehicles wholesale wise and entering them into the market are doing really well on the whole. Obviously, 3-year-old cars are in high demand. It's that price point position that we always like to see. And some of those cars, particularly petrol cars, I've said, have sold really well, and over cap performance on some vehicles has been the norm, and some of those prices have risen.
I know it's always difficult to work out the precise reason for for rises and increased demand, but particularly on petrol. I mean, there does seem to be, particularly on the consumer side, there does seem to be quite a bit of demand for petrol cars, possibly at the expense of electric at the moment. Are you seeing that play out?
Yeah, I think it's not just the consumer. I think it's also the retailer. I think they know that they can sell the petrol cars. They know there's demand for them, and it's their money that they're investing in the car, and of course they can turn that car very quickly. I think what will come over time is there will be more of a reliance on EVs to get you to where you need to be, and anybody is in that market now can do very well. You just have to be set up and available to. You've got to understand what you're selling, and you've got to have the price point exactly right to sell them.
Yeah, yeah, and really you can't blame dealers. You know, they're business people. If they're able to sell a petrol car quicker than an electric one, for example, they're going to go for the easier option, aren't they? So, I mean, are you sort of seeing a bit of a reluctance from dealers stocking electric cars? Because as we know, the values and the prices are more subject or more prone to fluctuations.
That's a really good question. I think we are seeing more and more dealers come into the market. There was that reluctance now, but I think when you start to compare a petrol to an EV, particularly if it's a similar car, for instance, the Vauxhall Mokka E compared to the petrol, the Mokka E looks incredibly good value. And therefore, why wouldn't you take the EV? It's just the sales process is a little bit different. And you've got to have salespeople who understand the EV market as well. So I think there's going to be some investment on both. But with regard to the EV market, we've already seen 40% of the total volume of wholesale cars that we saw last year in the first 3 months. So that is growing, and that's not going to stop. So at some point, retailers are going to have to get on the bus, and they're going to have to start selling EVs. And I think once they're into it and everybody's into it, it will carry on. But I think we're in for a period of flux where, getting used to doing that and risking all that it's going to take some time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there really does seem to be some real bargains, electric car bargains at the moment, particularly in the sort of the 20,000 to 25,000 mark. That seems to be a bit of a sweet spot. I mean, is that, I mean, for any dealers who are perhaps considering starting to stock electric cars, I mean, is that probably the best place to start? Because that seems to be where the demand is.
Yeah, I think mid to high teens up to the mid-20s is a good place to start. It just depends what you stock currently. Obviously, if you're selling much higher value cars, then you've got to pick the stock that goes right with your particular dealership. But I think there is that fear there. I think everybody got their fingers burned a few months ago, or probably about 19 months ago, actually. But and it was painful, wasn't it? But those cars have come down so much that they look really good value. We've seen some fall this month in value, but they have tended to be some of the newer entrants coming into the market who probably were at a high point because we never saw any available for sale, and they were not in the retail environment. As soon as they've entered the wholesale market, they have seen their wings clipped and values move down. But they will catch up, and that hierarchical position between different EVs will find its level.
Yeah. One thing which we were reporting on quite a bit towards the back end of 2023 was this huge gap between trade prices and retail prices. We're sort of 3 months into this year. I mean, is that widening, or is that getting a little bit narrower? Is there still a big disconnect between retail and trade?
It's a lot closer than it was, because obviously we work on a margin. We don't work on anything else other than what we think is a fair margin for a car. We don't suggest to dealers that because we've moved a position on the trade that they should reduce all their car prices. Of course we don't. We expect them to deal their way through them, which is exactly what they've done in some quite testing times. But once we come out the other side, the margins look pretty good, and I think that retail to trade is much closer to what we would have anticipated them being. I think that's what's helped the first quarter, because you couldn't do anything with interest rates. They were set where they are. The only thing that could move was the very high prices of some of the cars out there in the market, and that alignment was painful, but has helped to generate a good first quarter.
Yeah. On a general level, Mark, I mean, how are diesels faring? Because I mean, one of the themes from our Car Dealer Live conference at the beginning of this month was that the long-term outlook for them perhaps looks a little bit rocky. But at the moment, I mean, what are you seeing with that fuel type?
Yeah, I think if the car's right and is in good condition, it will definitely be saleable. People are not put off buying diesel, but it has to be the right car. I think some of the older diesels that are before Euro 5, they are very, very hard work. And, they have seen some movements already this month and will continue to do, I think, over time. But I think people can still buy a used diesel and will buy used diesel if it fits their driving needs.
Yeah. Lastly, Mark, I mean, it's time to get your crystal ball out. But I mean, how does April look for you? I mean, that's like I said earlier on, March tends to be you don't tend to see a huge number of fluctuations. April, that situation can tend to change. What's April this year looking like for you, do you think?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think stability will still be on the mind of lots of people. We can expect to see that there will still be an influx of cars right at the end of March into April, and that might just cool the market a little bit. But I think clean cars in good condition, the right models, they're going to still be in high demand. I can see some of the older and high mileage vehicles really struggle through April. And with regard to the market, we know lots of people go on holiday at this time of the year, and that's already evident that people are already missing from certain calls when I've been on them. So I would suspect that it will be a little bit quieter used car wise in April, but still, we're still thinking we're a stable market.
Hmm. Brilliant. Well, thank you for that, Mark. Some really interesting insight. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you, James.
But that's it for today's Car Dealer Live. Join us again very soon. Bye bye.